as I've told my team, I'm as famous as I ever care to be. And so I can devote my energy to advancing you. And it's consistent with my embrace of servant leadership. It's this next phase where I'm now actually beginning to work for people who used to work for me, which is a really interesting and fun phase of a career.
Well, welcome back to Season 4 of the Faculty Factory podcast. I'm Kim Skorupski, your host, and I'm really glad to be here and glad you've joined us on the podcast. We're starting off Season 4, the year 2022, with some oldies but goodies. We're doing a reunion parade, and with us today is the great Dr. David Rogers from Alabama. Dr. Rogers, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Kim. How are you?
I'm good. Folks, David Rogers was with us on episode number 8. So back in season number 1, we are now way over 150, well, not way over 150 episodes, but there'll be a link on the facultyfactory.org website to go check out his first episode, again, number 8, back in January 29th, 2019. So 3 years, and you'll hear if you listen to his episode, a lot of things were kind of prophetic about the current time. But David, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do in Alabama?
So I was, in 2019, held the dual roles of Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Professional Development, and had also become the Chief Wellness Officer for UAB Medicine. And UAB Medicine is the collective of all of the different entities that include the School of Medicine, but include other aspects of it as well. Earlier this year, I stepped down from the Senior Associate Dean role to focus all of my administrative time just completely on wellness.
Love it. Wellness. Yeah, this is, wow, what good timing or fortuitous. Talk about coincidences that wellness started hitting our, environments and our cultures, and then we get a global pandemic. So this is kind of an interesting pattern of events. So tell us, how this whole thing happened for you, and how did your office fare and your faculty do this past year in this new role?
Yeah, I think it's, I've described that the effect that the pandemic has had is it's been a great illuminator. So things like inequity of healthcare, the contribution of racism to different groups, all of this stuff has just become, I think, more starkly apparent. And we certainly have struggled here in Alabama with our staff and providers. People have really been stressed and distressed. We're experiencing a lot of the same things where people are just walking away from healthcare just because of the chronicity of it. I think what it has exposed is that at least here at UAB, that we could have done better, in terms of how we were treating people. But this is an opportunity to really double down on that and say, as we try to build back into whatever our future is, more focus on people, how we treat people, how we lead people is really important. I've compared it. I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and my family would go to the beach for our vacations because it was available and cheap. And the pandemic to me has felt like what it felt like as a child, where you would get out in the deeper water and you would get overtopped by a wave. So the wave would come over you, and that wasn't bad. But if the surf was up, then you just got hit after wave after wave after wave. So I think what we're seeing is this accumulated effect of just wave after wave of stressors. And early on, it was just anxiety about the virus, and then no PPE, and then financial cuts, and then, people beginning to quit, and that pushed on every burden. So it definitely has heightened, I think, everyone's awareness that we need to be thinking about wellness, not only for our faculty and staff, but our learners. How do we prepare our learners? In my own family, I had a couple of great grandparents that died in the pandemic of 1918. And I know that became a part of our family, and my grandmother would talk about her mother. And I think there's some lessons, whether the pandemic is ever over or just evolves into something, we do need to, I think, huddle up and think about what are the lessons we've learned. So I think a focus on wellness is one of those lessons.
I love that metaphor of the wave after wave, and then the waves that keep hitting us now, obviously these variants.
Right.
And I think a lot of us expecting that this would be over by now. And so, yeah, so thinking and using, riffing on the metaphor, what saved you as a young child from the wave after wave after wave after wave? What are some of the possible ways that you got out of that? And then what enabled you to have the courage or the interest to even go back in that ocean ever again?
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. The way we are trying to work on wellness is at multiple levels, because the stressors come from society. Like we have a low vaccination uptake in Alabama. So people get very frustrated, angry when people show up with COVID that just refuse to get the vaccine for whatever reason. Some of those societal things are tough, but we, work on advocacy around that. Some are organizational. We think senior leadership has to be attentive to the effects on it. What individuals can do is to take some ownership of your own wellness. So to continue the ocean metaphor, I've encouraged people to look at stress management techniques and resilience training. We really like the SMART program that was developed by Amit Sood, who was at the Mayo Clinic. He's now got his own program, but he's got a really accessible program that's evidence-based. But you really have to, that's what you can do, is like getting somebody to throw you a floating device when you're out in the waves. That's something you can start right away. But I make it very clear that our organizational approach is not to make the workforce more resilient, but also to be more thoughtful about work and how do we design work and how do we ask people to do their work. We've had a lot of pressure in healthcare that I think it was already causing burnout before the pandemic ever came. It was just a tidal wave on top of a building problem. So that's been our approach, is individual, team leaders, senior leaders, but even out into society, trying to mitigate some of these stressors.
Yeah. So you said earlier, really focusing on, getting back to people. How do we treat and how do we lead? And you kind of made me think of something. I think it was 60 Minutes, maybe I saw on Sunday night, or maybe it's a Sunday morning show, I don't know, where they interviewed restaurant leaders or people who own restaurants.
Yeah.
And they talked, and this woman was saying, we just realized that we had to really, it's not about raising the minimum wage. It's about treating your employees, better. You give them health care,
right,
give them opportunities, pay them a really good wage. Not only are restaurant owners having a hard time getting employees, but keeping the employees. So how do you do that? And she's saying, it's not just enough to do this. You have to do all these other things. And so that kind of made me curious. What were we doing wrong that made you realize, we weren't really people-centered and people are now walking away. They're not going to go back into that ocean because we weren't there to throw them the little floaty, or we didn't form a human chain to pull them out. We didn't lift them up on our shoulders. So what were your observations, or where are you pivoting to really focus on treating and leading people?
I think that there are some really good models of how to design work that creates opportunity for people to engage and flourish. So one is self-determination theory. Another is John Demand's resource theory. And in those, it's about an important feature, if you look at that, or the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A really important need for people is belonging, feeling appreciated and having time for social support. And, I've been around clinical medicine since 1985, I guess, when I was a medical student. And what I've seen is people have been put under pressure, and a lot of it's about how we fund healthcare. So we've really increased the pace at which people are doing their work. And I think really exhausted people. Things like the electronic health record were never really designed to make care easier. They were designed for other reasons, including capturing events for finance. So I think there's been a real push around efficiency and finance, and what we squeezed out are the time for that opportunities for people to interact with these socially And some of that has to be on us. So if you think about like national meetings, to me, the reason to even physically go to a national meeting are those social interactions. But when we all go out to the breaks and then get our phones checking our emails, or it's like, this is ridiculous. We just traveled 500 miles to then be interacting with the office. We need to be intentional about building our own social support. So I think that what has happened is the pressures are such that we've squeezed out that opportunity for people to feel like that they have social interactions and that they really belong in an important way to the organization. So inefficiency is not bad, but I think the emphasis has been on too much of it's been on around production and efficiency, and we need to get to a better balance so that people have time to do these other things that we know are really important. This is not new information. Some of these models are decades old, but we've neglected it, I think, in thinking about healthcare work.
I love that you brought up self-determination theory, and it's reminding me of Jeff Linus, University of Rochester. We recorded 2 episodes with him, and one was exactly on self-determination theory, about the 3 factors of it. And those of you who are interested, go back and check that out. That was I can look it up when he posted, but Jeff Linus, Liness, 3 components of self-determination theory: autonomy, competence, and relatedness or connectedness.
Yep.
So this is just perfect. Autonomy, I do it because I want to do it and I have a sense of choice. Competence, am I good at it? Am I a master of it? And then relatedness and connectedness, others and common goals and the people. And it's so, I really think it's so important what you just said about this emphasis on productivity and efficiency and making us feel like, or all of us buying into this idea of machines, this cult of busy and out busying each other and ourselves, and this feeling that we have to be these human doings rather these human beings. And if you don't have your cell phone in your hand during a break, then, you must not be very important. So it's this really strange, and I like the way you said that it's not the individual's responsibility to just be more resilient and do mindfulness and do yoga and be tough and be strong and soldier through this. And it's also not the organization's responsibility solely. It's both, isn't it always? And that's just the complexity of it, that we have to both be working together and taking responsibility ourselves, but we can't operate in a vacuum. We have to be in a culture, in a department, in a unit, on a floor that works together to say, you're on vacation. Please don't answer your emails or we're going to disable it. No, do not text me. I'm not going to text you if there are any problems, or I don't want to see your face or hear anything about you till you come back from the Himalayas.
Yeah, that's well stated. My funniest thing in this era has been senior leaders who take a picture of their office and use that as their Zoom background instead of just showing that they're sitting at home. What is it about our culture that makes us feel like that there's something to be proud of, that we're toxic, in our busyness? And so I think just trying to be present with people when you're in conversation or just being attentive. We have a couple of sayings in Alabama. The one that I really like is the people at the end of an interaction say, "I appreciate you." And I've really used that a lot. To me, it's a measure of respect, to say, I see that you helped me and I thank you for your kindness. And I think more of that, I think, and that's where I feel like academic medical centers could be exemplar for the rest of society. I mean, we have opportunities where people can do new things and interesting things. And certainly the work that we do is incredibly impactful and it's socially good. Like, we don't have to worry about, I'm not working for a social media conglomerate right now, worried about that I'm now being accused of forming toxicity. So we do a thing that people like and value. And yet I don't think, do a good job. When we talked last, we talked about servant leadership, and a really good model of that for senior leadership isn't their customers, so-called, aren't the patients. Their customers are frontline workers. Yeah. And that's where I think we need to do better. They need to be saying, what do I need to do to support you in what you're doing?
So important. I like that. Again, I hate that I'm always torn in two and it's always a yes and it's a yes and
Yeah.
is recognizing what you said earlier about being present, being with other people. I'm saying this to you as I'm still in my basement, home alone, and being an extrovert. How do we balance this obvious need that we're human beings and we need to be with other human beings? We are social beings, social creatures, and we just need each other. How do we balance that truism with the fact and preference of some people to say, please don't make me come back to work?
Yeah.
I know that you want us to return to work. I know that there is this little bit of a taboo that I have to have a fake background in my Zoom box that you don't think I'm on a beach in Tahiti or in my bed in my jammies. Why do I have to be forced to then drive an hour and a half into work, pay for parking, buy lunch, worry about daycare for my kiddos, and then drive back home when I'm uber efficient at home? So I hear this both sides, and I appreciate both sides of it because I am both sides, and we're all both sides. So how do we meet in the middle with, I want people, please, let's all have a cup of coffee. Can we run into each other in the restroom? I'm tired of being alone in the restroom.
Yeah.
Versus people saying, please don't make me do this. I am so much more efficient. I am knocking it out of the park, staying at home. And it's working for me. So how do we do that, David?
I think the best way to do is to think about the people and their job. Another good job model is called job person fit. So I think in every case, my aspirational point and the point I've been preaching is with everybody who's doing jobs, have a conversation with your supervisor to say, where are you? We're all trying to figure out the rules of re-engagement. What does that look like? What I'm advocating is every supervisor or leader would say to all of the people that work for them, let's talk about your job and your preferences and where are you and what's good for you. If your preference is to stay home and you can do your job to stay home, I've been arguing with senior leadership, this is in your strategic interest to let people do this. It means that they're even more productive because they get all that commute time to work. I'm going to help you with parking. All academic medical centers don't have enough parking. So I'm going to give you 20% of your parking spaces for nothing. And I'm going to create loyalty in your workforce that says, hey, I was heard. Now, it may be that your job doesn't allow you to be home, or it may be your preference is, I really need to come back to the office. And so I think working out the right combination and balance, our position is that it just needs to be done in a collective way with full engagement by everybody so that we can have conversations and then sort out the best system long term. This is one of the lessons we should learn from the pandemic. When it served the organization's interest to send us all home and make us remote in, that's what they did. And now that it's serving their interest or just some philosophy of you all need to come back, it's like, why are we doing that? Why don't we learn some lessons from all of this that we can use? Because I think the next generation of workforce is going to say, we really want to be able to have hybrid work and work options, not to mention flexible work, which would be to the great advantage of young parents and all these other things, that we've been pushing on.
David, I agree with everything you just said. Now, just allow me to play devil's advocate, if you will.
Okay.
I'm making the boo-ha-ha fingers together. And this is where my goofy mind goes to that it was a cartoon with little Wally, a little robot guy who was on Earth, and his whole job was to smash garbage and make little cubes of garbage.
Oh, yeah.
Earth was no longer inhabitable. And then they show the future with the human beings where we're just this big blobbo people just scooted around in little bean pods with oversized drink things.
Yeah.
Now, this is, again, my Looney Tunes brain. David, we don't want people to stay home. It's ruining. We live in a society here. Now that sounds like, I think it's George on Seinfeld. We live in a society. How can we have a society if we have chunks of people who are not part of our society, that they're not in the club? And I'm thinking back at church, our pastor's like, please come back, it's safe,
Yeah.
come back. And some people are probably, again, they're comfy at home, dialing into church in their jammies. So why do we make them come in? Because there is something to be said for worshiping together.
Yeah.
So, help me. Let's, what do we say to the fact that some people are like, if we have everybody at home on their couches for the rest of their lives, what kind of a world are we living in if we're not together? Do we have to be together?
Yeah, well, see, I think that's what, we're hearing is a lot of this sort of philosophy, like a senior leader just decides that social cohesion is improved by us gathering together. Well, I think that if you read the literature on social cohesion, it would tell you a couple things. One is not everybody needs that time. A fundamental difference between introverts and extroverts is social engagement is energizing to extroverts. It has a cost to introverts. It doesn't mean that it's not good for people to be together. As we talked about, belongingness and being together are as important. I think the solution is to be thoughtful and purposeful about when we gather together, and also to be sensitive that people still have young children at home, or they have older adults that are at health risk, that we need to accommodate those differences. So I think, to use the church analogy, I can't worship collectively by myself, right? So to me, that's the argument you make, that it's going to land differently if you come together and sing or do other elements of worship, depending on your particular faith choice. There are things that you can only do together. So let's get together and do those things. But things that we can do apart, let's also do that apart, or offer that opportunity. I'm kind of curious to see, like, are the national organizations, like, what are meetings going to look like? Are we going to go to hybrid options for everything? And there's a strategic value for groups to say, well, if you don't want to come, and start thinking about things like climate change. Maybe instead of all of us flying all over to go to these meetings, maybe some of us would choose to be a little bit more selective about when we would gather together. So, like, as a surgeon, I've never quit gathering with people, because surgery is a thing that takes a team and requires a physical contact. And so parts of my life have never stopped. And for people like you who truly derive great joy from gathering together, we should afford those opportunities and figure out how to do it safely. But I think trying to negotiate the parameters and be thoughtful about it is what I'm advocating for. In the same way, if you say, I don't feel comfortable coming to work, but you can't do your job any other way, and the organization can't find a thing for you to do, well, then we need to come to a time of respectful separation to say, if you're here to check in patients and you can't do that from home, and we can't find a good place to use you, then we're just going to have to agree that this doesn't work for us anymore. So, but I'm just asking that it be done thoughtfully and with full engagement of everybody, and being sensitive to that it's just not the senior leader decides, it's we all need to be together, that it ought to be a collective decision that we sort out.
I mean, so well said. And I want to just put an exclamation point on that collective, and it's not going to be unanimous. The decision is not going to be unanimous. So, and you can't force people to say, 9 of us, it's the 12 angry men. You can't say, well, we're all on board. How come you don't want to come in and have bagels with us on Friday?
Exactly.
So
no judgment.
Right. That respect of people's choice, is part and parcel of that community, decision.
Well, and many years ago, I had to challenge myself about followership. And there are many things that among my leaders, want to do that it wouldn't be my preference. But I sort of said, unless I have some moral, ethical objection, then I'm just going to do it. Right. I think leadership is hard, and we owe that to the leaders. So this week I put on a suit, strapped on, a KN94 mask, and went to a social thing that people felt was really important that we do in person. And then just, remain amused and curious that everybody comes into the room with their mask off and take it down to eat and drink. And I'm like, this just seems silly. But, that's part of where I have to challenge myself to play along and do those social things that are important to people. So,
yeah, love it. I love it. Now, I wanted to hear what you had to think, your thoughts and your wisdom around transitioning.
yeah. Yeah, so my decision to leave the senior associate dean role, and I think what I would pass on to people that listen in globally to your thoughts and your interviews is, I elected to step down to that role for a couple of reasons. One is I had been in it for 9 years. I did have this opportunity to focus exclusively on wellness. I learned a lot from the faculty affairs community that's been really valuable in this work. But I feel like that after that, you really shouldn't be in these jobs forever, that you need to set for yourself a term. Many organizations do it. I think it's a good thing to do yourself, to say, I'm going to serve in this role for 5 years with maybe one renewal, and then I'm going to step out. And I think that's important because these things need a fresh perspective and fresh energy. You get to the point where you feel like I've got this sorted out just perfectly. To me, that's a sign that it's a time for a fresh look at it. But the other has to do with equity, that we still struggle not to have enough women and people in underrepresented minority groups in these senior leadership roles. As we talked about last time, I believe the higher you go, the lower you are. Nonetheless, you do have an opportunity to have influence on decisions and that sort of thing. So stepping down then gives my organization to rethink the profile of the leadership team and who's in it. And hey, can we bring in a fresh perspective of a mid-career woman faculty or a mid-career person who's in an underrepresented group to kind of enrich the perspective of a group? So what I'm trying to figure out now as I reach in probably the last phase of my career is what I derive great joy from is helping now people in their first leadership role be successful. And I would encourage it to any of your listeners that if you're worried, if I step down, will there be things to do? You begin just to derive more happiness to advancing those people and giving them opportunity. As I've told my team, I'm as famous as I ever care to be. And so I can devote my energy to advancing you. And it's consistent with my embrace of servant leadership. It's this next phase where I'm now actually beginning to work for people who used to work for me, which is a really interesting and fun phase of a career.
I love it, love it, love it, love it. Now, here at Hopkins, what we did is, and I've been here almost 9 years. And so like you, I'm thinking 10 years is going to be a time for me to move on and just step off and let other people, it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like you that there should be term limits, because even despite all of our good intentions and our passion and our history, they're just new ideas, new generations, fresh ideas. We need to kind of reinvigorate. So I I just lost my train of thought again. I swear sitting in my basement is okay. So this is it. This is it. Don't edit this out, Casey. I let's all just be real here. So what we did over the summer here in Hopkins in the Office of Faculty is, we have under the Office of Faculty our, cadre of associate dean, assistant dean, folks for little smidgens of time here and there, here and there. Well, what we had not done a good job of over the prior 9 years since I've been here almost, is we had not really thoughtfully engaged or collaborated strategically with the leaders in all of our almost 30 departments in the School of Medicine who hold titles like vice chair for faculty development, vice chair for mentoring, director of promotion committees, grant review committees, all those leaders. And we thought we really need to bring this community together to build community between the departments and us, have a bench, start getting a bench for succession planning, share best practices, get them talking to each other as well as talking to us and back and forth. And that way, to me, it's there's just so much wisdom out there that instead of us pushing things down to the departments and saying, my gosh, and by golly, why don't they just use our template for mentoring it? Don't they know about the website? Well, rather than that kind of push, say, let's all sit together. And lo and behold, we just started this in July, I think. This group of our we call them the Faculty Affairs and Development Board, the FADB. They've branched off into 4 working groups around promotion, around mentoring, around wellness, around resources for faculty and research. And they are going crazy with just tools and organizing resources and surveys and data and coming together. And there's so much enthusiasm and passion and energy. And we've been sitting on this the whole time. And so I'm curious how you in Alabama structure or think about or engage or identify your leaders for at this top tier. How does that work for you operationally?
Yeah, so we've done exactly what you did with wellness. So we have a group of faculty and staff wellness champions is the term we use in all of the departments and other units. And we bring together, and we've had exactly the same experience. They've brought great ideas and it connects them to each other. You know, we get them to present, like when we hear a really great idea, we get them to present to the group. And we also have a communication piece that we do once a week about wellness, and we highlight those wellness champions who are to a large degree younger faculty who have a great passion for this conversation. But what we've seen in that, the strategic value is the department chairs, of course, they get very proud when they see their department, you know, when a practice is happening in their department. So we've used it to help the champions by being able to say to the department chair, hey, your department got called out in a positive way. And so it is creating a really vibrant community. And so I think it's a really good model, and I congratulate you for doing it. We've had exactly the same experience. I don't think we do as good as we should in terms of thinking about succession planning. We have started a process, which I think has been very good for the interim chairs who are typically internal people. They have started putting together an actual search committee and accepting applications. And I think that begins to then build a portfolio of, oh, this person is going to be really good. And some of those people that serve as interim chairs, even if they don't become the permanent chair, the incoming chair recognizes their great talent. And so they find another role for them. So I think you just have to really be disciplined about thinking where, and then giving people opportunities and then making sure that you come alongside and develop them. You know, I've many times said that a great resource for me in my faculty development work is every stupid mistake I've ever made. And so I talk a lot about that fairly authentically to say, this is a mistake I made. Don't make the same mistake. At least make new mistakes. Mm-hmm. You know, that's how we're going to advance the academy. And so I think that developing a community and then being thoughtful about bringing people on to allow them to, thoughtfully succeed. Because I do see that when chairs come here from other places, it takes them about a year to really kind of understand the place. Invariably, the number one mistake they make is they think promotion and tenure works here, like where they're coming from, and it never does, ever. And so it's always rough in that first 4 years. So I think there's a lot to be said for grooming up your own people internally to let that be a significant amount of your leadership, but also recognizing some of those people will get recruited away. And that's good for the general society of academic medicine to have some mixture of both internal and outside people being leaders.
Yes, I agree with you. And I also appreciate your focus on diversity and equity and inclusion and purposely identifying people for the diversity that they represent, be that in I always talk about the broad range of diversity, age, rank, degree type, department, specialty, and then, of course, the usual race and ethnicity and gender and identity and on and on and on and on. And so that also, to me, is really, really important that we remember when we're drawing it, that we do this on purpose, that we look for people who can be brought up internally. And we do that at Hopkins. I mean, I always have a list of, and I could show you, people in the audience can't hear this, or see it, but I have a list of faculty members and I have them by like topic, who are like the go-to people that I'm like, next for leadership opportunity, as we all know, and there are very few of them. So that's another reason why I think term limits is because you have all these people that you groom through leadership programs and mentoring them and think they'd be great. And like you said, then we run the risk of, well, we only have a handful of leadership opportunities, and where are they going to go? They're going to go somewhere else. And how can you blame them? You can't blame them. That's part of the life cycle. And they fly out of the nest, and you're very proud to say that they were, raised as an egg here. And so that makes it good. But golly, I guess I need more coffee. But the inside, or raising them inside and grooming them inside, I think is so important, and that we draw from not only our FAB, the Faculty Affairs and Development Board, but all those leadership programs that we offer, the graduates from them, the Faculty Senate. So I guess another message to faculty who are listening, who maybe they don't feel like they're a leader, even though, hello, footnote, you're already a leader because you were a faculty member and you were very, very much respected in the community and by your colleagues, being any kind of a professor ranking, that these opportunities can exist by you getting involved and engaged, that people are watching you, people are keeping an eye on you and keeping lists, and making sure that when the right opportunities come up, that we do have list of people who are, good to go. But that only happens by leaders watching for that and taking care to be mindful of that, and not hogging the leadership roles, and also by making transparent where are those leadership roles. That was the other thing I was trying to yammer away until I remembered, was that sometimes it's a big opaque mess. Like, who are the leaders in the departments? And you ask some of our department directors or chairs, and they don't even know. I mean, there's some of the departments are so big, they really can't get their hands around the myriad roles and who's in them and who's transitioned out of them and who has a little piece of a part of this and that and the other. And what does leader constitute? Who exactly are the leaders? But if you can blow that open, that also provides like an old-fashioned org chart, if you will. That transparency allows faculty members to see opportunities and see gaps, and then create their own opportunities by saying, well, we do A and we do B, but then we need to have like an A plus or a B minus in there. There's a little bit of space for this.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think that the book Quiet, draws everyone's attention to that. You need to be attentive of the people who maybe don't even have those titles, but who have just, one of my favorite books on leadership is The Leadership Challenge by Coos and Posner. And the reason I like it is it's the durable things that leaders always do. And I agree with you 100% that anybody listening to this is leading, if you think about leading as influencing other people. And, I've told surgical interns who'll say, well, I'm not a leader. And I said, if I were to sneak into your organization and ask the medical students about you, you already have a reputation. They're already saying you're good to work with or you're not good to work with. And so, yes, you absolutely are influencing people in the organization. But I think sometimes it's the people who don't want to draw attention to themselves, who don't gain these titles. At least here, we love a good title, and I've learned to use them strategically. But there's a lot of people that are doing leadership, but that are so humble that they don't even, ask for a title. What I would say to them is you need to get the title that's requisite with the work and the responsibility, because it does create additional opportunities in the future. So by the same token, I would challenge current leaders to look beyond the org chart and say, who is out there that really, there's in one of Collins's book, I think he talks about so-called water carriers, people that maybe never were in the ultimate jobs, but they've been incredibly important. They're the people you think about, and to say, oh, we should put those people into formal roles too. So.
Mm-hmm. Very good stuff. I appreciate you, David.
Well, that's good. I appreciate you back.
Wow, this is so good. I really, love all of this. And as you know, I could sit here and talk with you for hours and hours and hours, and especially easily talk for hours when I forget half of the things I want to say. But I eventually get around to it. This is one of the problems with the pandemic is I really feel like I'm losing a lot of my words. I kind of lose track of my thought, and I don't know what that is because I'm all by myself. So it's not as if I've got 1,000 distractions, but So maybe I better get in with people because I'm slowly losing my capacity to recall and remember things.
I think we're all having to, like, I've been had fun watching people like figure out, how do we greet each other? Are we shaking hands? Are we tapping elbows, or what are we doing? I need to do some searching around to see what are they doing in Europe, where they were, you would kiss each other on the cheek. It's like, what's happening? So it's fun watching two people approach each other and have to sort of signal like, this is what we're doing. So we probably need to get you back with people so you don't, lose your social skills.
I'm so yes, backwards. I have a couple times now. Oh my gosh, a handful of times now at the gym. I'll run into somebody and I'm just like, I'm a hugger. So I just walk up to people and grab them and they're like, have you not heard what's happening? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. So I don't observe that. I am completely like clueless so many times. Like, Kimberly, you better step back. This is not unacceptable. Well, this is great. Folks, you've been listening to and enjoying David Rogers, University of Alabama. Wow, what a great conversation. I hope you appreciated it as much as I appreciate it. And I appreciate him and I appreciate you. And I'm going to leave David with the last thought and last word.
I really appreciate you reaching out. It's been fun to have a follow-up conversation, and let's don't wait for another pandemic between them. I've been watching talk shows. I like to watch talk shows so I can track social trends without actually having to engage in them. And I notice the talk show guests are always people that are there to plug something. So I don't have anything to plug, but I'm happy to circle back and give you an update as I navigate my own way through life. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks, everybody. Tune in next time to the Faculty Factory podcast. And hey, if you have any questions or ideas for topics or conversations or people, or if you want to be in the Faculty Factory, why don't you shoot me an email at facultyfactorykim@gmail.com. Again, that's all one word, facultyfactorykim@gmail.com. Bye, everybody. Come by next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.